Fellow advocates, my name is Tina Rodriguez, and I would like to welcome you to the Arizona Alzheimer's State Day First Timers Symposium. The 7th annual Arizona Alzheimer's State Day is just 6 days away, and we are back in person. Hooray! During today's workshop, you will hear from volunteer advocates and staff on Arizona Alzheimer's stats, our state policy priorities, how to effectively have a legislative visit, and how to share your personal dementia story. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat section or hold them until the end of the session today in our Q&A portion. However, if you have a private question, direct it to the Alzheimer's Association Advocacy co-host in the chat box. Also, don't forget about our Know Before You Go workshop scheduled for Thursday, January 19th at 3 p.m., where we will have a deep dive into our advocacy asks for State Day, as well as what to expect during the event. Before we show a quick video, I'd like to personally share my story. I've been with the Alzheimer's Association a little over 8 years now. When I joined the organization, I never imagined how personal my work would become. I came to the association just after my husband, Kevin, lost his jobs in 2014. Prior to that, he had a high-performing career as a vice president of commercial sales and commercial flooring. Simultaneously, as I was educating myself in my role, I started noticing significant changes in Kevin. I thought because I was learning so much about dementia through my work, I was overthinking it. After 2 long years, we went to our general practitioner and I asked if he thought the issues my husband was having could be related to Alzheimer's. He said no way and prescribed Kevin some antidepressants, saying he was too young for it to be Alzheimer's and most likely it was due to the stress of losing his job. They of course didn't work, and after exploring all other possibilities with no answers, in January of 2017, I requested a referral to a neurologist. It took us 2 attempts, but we found a doctor that was honest and straightforward and was willing to give us answers. He diagnosed Kevin with early onset Alzheimer's in June of 2017. He was only 53. The news was a blow, but at least we were able to move forward and face the disease and what it meant for our family. It felt like it took forever for us to get answers, but I think we were truly fortunate. Not everyone going through this is aware of the association and the services and educations they provide. Some families struggle a lot longer than we did. The association provided us with resources to locate a neurologist, education, care planning, which was so critical, and support groups. From 2019 to 2021, it seemed the disease was on hyperdrive. Kevin lost his ability to do most of his favorite things, like mountain biking and using his phone to capture his awesome Arizona sunset pictures. In 2019, he needed assistance with all of his daily activities, hygiene, dressing, eating, and needed someone with him at all times. Being a caregiver is a 24/7 responsibility. I was extremely lucky that my mom retired to Arizona in 2010 and was a co-care partner with me for Kevin. If I didn't have her and the support of close friends and working where I do, I don't know how I would have managed. When I was at the office, she would stay with Kevin and ensure his needs were met. I don't think unless you've experienced it firsthand that you can really grasp what happens in a family living through this disease. By the middle of 2020, Kevin had forgotten how to get in and out of a car, how to sit down at the table, how to get in and out of bed, to feed himself. So many basic things we all take for granted. Being a caregiver is challenging. As a caregiver, there's nonstop daily stress, all while you were trying to stay calm and positive for your person. There's also a constant anxiety and sadness over the loss of who your person was before the disease. We always tried to focus on the moment and not look too far forward, taking it one day at a time. We often used the term our new normal each time we hit another stage. The one thing we could always count on and the thing that stayed consistent was Kevin's love of music. It stayed with him always. In 2021, Kevin's decline accelerated. He lost the ability to walk and communicate with words. But as I mentioned before, you could always connect with Kevin through music, and I will always be grateful for that. We lost Kevin December 21st of 2021, just a little over a year ago, and he was only 57. We haven't figured out our new normal without him. And as I said, caregiving is the hardest role I've ever had, but I'd give anything to have it back. I'm so grateful for all of you and all the work that you're doing, your dedication to our mission, and for fighting for these families like mine. It really, truly matters. Thank you so much for letting me share.
So, again, I'm new to the advocacy program, but I'm no stranger to Alzheimer's. Back in 2016, my grandma was diagnosed with stage 4 Alzheimer's, and we had obviously no idea what that was going to entitle to and bring and everything that was going to start with that whole process. We just had thought that maybe that it was something that just happens when a person just gets elder, or is just something when a person retires, that it was just going to be like just kind of like hiccups around the road. But gradually within the year, she went to stage 7, and within a time with less than a year, and she passed away from Alzheimer's. And it's learning to love the person for who they were and what they were. And it's setting everything aside that you have within yourself to take care of that person, feelings, emotions, and everything, because they no longer can take care of themselves for themselves. From day-to-day tasks, Alzheimer's is a brain disorder that it makes your memory take a whole different turn of things that you would done to be expected in some sense. And after that, it's just losing the ability to do day-to-day tasks and everything else that comes with that. And she was unrecognizable at the end because she no longer could feel pain or anything that physically, from hot to cold, to being able to eat or to do any of that stuff. And learning to the Alzheimer's Association really did help us, as in what to expect, the symptoms, on how to help her progress on like the caretaking, because there's not a lot of resources, and obviously there's not anything or like further studies to really conclude what causes it. So how can we cure something if we don't know what the cause is? And ever since then, we just been going to the Alzheimer's walks, and it's just knowing that there's a bigger support system out there to that just have helped us. And it's been 5 years, and it still feels like it's been a couple of months. You never get over someone that you love, because you lose them way before you lose them physically. And so I'm gonna go ahead and do the Arizona Alzheimer's facts and figures. Arizona has the fastest growth rate of Alzheimer's disease in the country. Numbers are estimated to increase by 33% in just 2 years. So within 2 years, that means a third of people living with Alzheimer's will increase. And currently there are 150,000 Arizonans living with Alzheimer's disease over the age of 65 that we know of. Less than 50% of people living with the disease are aware they have it. And we currently do not know how efficient data of Arizonans with Alzheimer's under the age of 65 is yet. Arizona is number 1 in the country with the highest average number of unpaid caregiver hours. Arizona is estimated to have over 257,000 Alzheimer's caregivers, providing over 500 million hours of unpaid care, estimated value to be over $9.5 billion. Almost 10% of caregivers are in poor physical health, and roughly 54% of those caregivers are living with a chronic health condition. Arizona has the fourth highest total Medicaid payments for Americans age 65 and older living with Alzheimer's or other dementias in the country. There are currently only 92 geriatricians serving the whole state of Arizona, which are basically in urban areas throughout the state, to be able to provide geriatric care to Arizonans. We need to increase the number of geriatric doctors by 295% by 2050. These are just a few statistics to show the impact Alzheimer's and dementia have in our great state. As you can see, our elected officials need to know these facts and continue to ensure support systems as in place to ensure Arizona is capable of caring for Arizona's impacted by this horrible disease.
Hello, everyone. My name is James Fitzpatrick, and I am the Director of Advocacy at the Alzheimer's Association. I am the one that has been blowing up your emails for the past couple of weeks. I do have a personal story as well. My grandmother passed away from the disease about 15 years ago. For me, living in the same state as my grandmother, I never saw anything. In my family, we didn't talk about it. It was always, grandma's just kind of kooky. Grandma's acting this way. Grandma's doing this. But I never saw anything. My sister, my dad, and my cousins, and my aunts and uncles would all say, oh yeah, grandma's doing this. This is what's happening because of her Alzheimer's. And I would go visit with my grandparents, and they lived in Sun City. And at the time I was in grad school in Tempe at ASU, nothing, ever. And then one day she passed away, and we still don't talk about it in my family. My dad is extremely proud of what I do and where I work. But if I ask him a question about my grandmother, he won't talk about it. It's something that happened, and it's something that happened in the past. And whatever it is for him, there's such great shame. And I don't want to say that my dad needs to talk about the death of his mother, but it is one thing that we need to make sure that we're talking about this. At the same time, while my grandmother was living with Alzheimer's, I was in grad school, and I have a degree in mental health. In the 2-year grad program, not once did we ever talk about deterioration of the brain, let alone any type of cognitive disease, cognitive decline, nothing. And this is the norm. There are still schools and graduate programs and doctorate programs, PMD programs, where aging might just be a chapter in the book, and Alzheimer's and dementia may just be a chapter or a paragraph in a book. Luckily, things are changing. I don't think that they're changing as fast, or the changes aren't keeping up with the growth of this disease, the impact of this disease. But I do have hope. And I need to make sure that I hold on to my hope, because I don't want everybody to go through what any family is going through. So I'm going to share what our state policy priorities are. This first list is a list of what the National Alzheimer's Association state policy priorities are. This is a list of goals that we want to try to achieve. And within each of these areas, there's various recommendations on legislation that we can try to get passed through the legislative route, administratively, statute, anything that we possibly can do. Now, our federal legislators also have a list of state policy priorities, but as we are focusing on state today, our first one is increase access to care, support, and treatment. This could be reducing barriers and ensure individuals living with dementia have adequate access to residential and home and community-based services. Ensure state Medicaid programs provide appropriate coverage to approve drug treatments, create a statewide crisis response, just to name a few. You can see just from the 3 things that I told you, that's very, very lofty. With an improved quality of care, we want to make sure that we increase the dementia competency of healthcare providers to deliver person-centered care through dementia-specific and culturally competent training. Also want to try to ensure that individuals living with dementia who are under court-ordered guardianship receive guardianship services by a dementia-educated guardian. Next, we have advanced risk reduction, early detection, and diagnosis. In this realm, we can expand access to resources in diverse and underserved communities, and establish policies to incentivize care planning for individuals and families with dementia with their physicians, and as well as establish policies to incentivize and advance dementia risk reduction across provider and community settings. And last, we have ensure a coordinated statewide response to Alzheimer's. Arizona does have the fastest growth rate of Alzheimer's disease in the country. It is not in our front door. It is not at our front door. It is not at our back door. It is in our homes. We want to make sure that we establish a statewide Alzheimer's dementia task force or committee that is administered by the state to address Alzheimer's and all related dementias. We also want to ensure that we have a state Alzheimer's plan. We want to ensure that we can get a dementia coordinator within the Department of Health, as well as ensure that there's research funding. So this year for State Day, which is on Monday, and we will go more in depth into detail about what our priority asks will be on Monday. But the first one is to establish dementia state plan and statute and create dementia unit within the Department of Health, within the Arizona Department of Health. Arizona State Plan on Dementia was published in 2015 and has not been updated since. State plans assess the state's current needs, identify gaps in services, and recommend strategies and policies to better serve individuals living with dementia and their families. Establishing a dementia unit within AZDHS will translate the vision of the state plan into implemented public policy, as well as effectively implementation can reduce the long-term impact of the disease on state budgets and improve the lives of people with dementia and their caregivers. Sorry for the pause, I was letting somebody into the meeting. And our second ask will be to fund a public health campaign focused on rural and underserved urban communities. Many experts believe the majority of cases occur as a result of complex interactions among genes and other factors. Evidence is strong that people can reduce their risk by making key lifestyle changes. New and innovative drugs are in the FDA pipeline, which have been shown to slow progression of the disease. Early detection and diagnosis are key to risk reduction. Funding a public health campaign will increase awareness and increase the number of early diagnoses, which will result in reduced hospitalizations and an increased quality of life. As I said, on Thursday's Know Before You Go event, we will go into a deeper dive in what your advocacy asks will be with delineated bullet points. So please make sure that you join us at 3 p.m. on Thursday, January 19th.
Hello, my name is Carol Brown. I currently work at an area agency on aging down in Yuma County in Arizona, and I work daily in program development and advocacy. And although I work on behalf of older adults every single day, my journey with becoming an advocate really started years ago when I worked in hospice care. So my story is a little different than anybody else's. I don't have a family member that's been affected by Alzheimer's or a form of dementia. But when I worked in hospice, I worked daily with families that were affected by it. I would help them get established with the care that they needed when it was that point in time in their loved one's life for hospice. The most difficult meetings that I had to go to, though, were the ones when a caregiver had called the office and wanted to meet with me. And I always knew in advance, because it was the caregiver that called, not the doctor, that I was going to be walking into a very challenging situation. And it went about the same way each time, where I would go to the door. Sometimes I would meet the loved one with Alzheimer's answering the door. But the caregiver would immediately escort me in and sit me down and proceed to tell me their story and what they're going through. At times, their loved one was very interactive still and able to be a part of the conversation easily. And I knew immediately that their loved one was not ready for hospice care whatsoever. But they were so desperate for help that they would beg me to try and help them get their loved one on hospice. So I had to be able to learn how to navigate that conversation with them explaining to them that it actually was good news, that it wasn't time yet for hospice care, and that I was going to be able to provide them with resources, which I sought out on my own to make sure that I was not walking out that door and leaving that caregiver with no help and no hope. And what I saw and came to recognize on a constant basis is that the caregivers were exhausted, they were overwhelmed, they didn't know how to find the support that they needed or the services that they needed. And it sent me on a journey to find those for them. It also sent me on a journey of looking for ways to fight on behalf of their needs. And so through that, I became an advocate. As I joined the Area Agency on Aging, I was able to get connected with the Alzheimer's Association. I'm privileged to be a volunteer and an advocate with them. And what I now see is that there has to be voices to represent our older adults and those that are affected directly by Alzheimer's or a form of dementia. They don't have a voice that they can speak on their own behalf. And so we lift our voices for them. And with that, I want to go ahead and continue to share with you as we talk about what it means to be an advocate and advocacy activities. So working with the Alzheimer's Association public policy staff, advocates can undertake a wide array of activities to raise their congressional and state legislators' awareness of the dementia crisis and to support the Alzheimer's Association's federal and state policy priorities. As we are here today, we're prepping for State Day at the Capitol. We're not going to be discussing those federal policies, action items for this year, as James mentioned. We're going to be focused on what we're doing for the Alzheimer's State Day at the Capitol in Arizona. But if you'd like more information and you want to find out more about advocacy on the federal level, just simply reach out to James Fitzpatrick. He is our advocacy director for Arizona, and he can assist you with that. Advocates work in teams, and we work to engage our elected officials year-round in a wide variety of ways. So depending on your interests, your skills, your abilities, you can, as an advocate, specialize in just one or two of the following activities or do a little bit of everything. We're eager to help you discover what will be impactful activities that you would enjoy. Some of the activities that you can choose to participate in are, you can meet with elected officials, you can lend your voice at the Arizona State Capitol or in congressional district offices throughout the year, or at the State Day and at the Advocacy Forum in Washington, D.C. You can raise awareness through local media. You can partner with the chapter staff to draft letters to the editors or to create op-eds. You can spark social media conversations by engaging online, inspire novices, recruit new advocates, and monitor legislator accounts for opportunities to comment or retweet. You can coordinate events and volunteers. You can work collaboratively with fellow advocates to invite your member of federal and state legislators to an Alzheimer's Association event, or you can mobilize advocates to attend town hall meetings or other events that they host. And you also can share your unique perspective, whether you're a researcher, a person with dementia, a young advocate, someone who is dealing with being in a minority ethnicity, or whatever your unique story may be. Sharing it in our meetings and communications can introduce new narratives with real impact.
Hello, my name is Jackie Goodwin, and I'm a volunteer advocate, along with Carol and several other people who are on the call today. So thank you so much for joining us. I just wanted to let you know that part of my story involves my mother, who I've lost to Alzheimer's. I've also lost my aunt, my mother's sister, to Alzheimer's. And my uncle, my mother's brother, also had vascular dementia. This is something that runs strongly in our family. And I thought I'd just share a little bit today with you about my mother. My mother didn't retire until she was 72 years old. She worked in the same doctor's office for many, many years. She loved her job and she loved being around people, so much so that even after she retired, she still went to that office one day a week to volunteer. Not long after she retired, some things happened that made me wonder if she was okay. Then one day she went to the ER complaining that she had abdominal pain. What transpired after that made us realize that there was something seriously wrong. I went to Connecticut the next day, knowing that I would be bringing her back here to live with us. I was there for about a week, and one day the office manager from the doctor's office where my mother had worked stopped by, and I learned that after they had moved to a new office, which was probably about a year or so before she retired, my mother was often lost in the office and put patients in the wrong exam room. One of the doctors refused to work with her, but another one had a soft spot for her and said he still would. It was so heartbreaking to hear that. Just imagining what my mother must have been going through, and she kept it to herself. And I know she was encouraged to retire from the job that she loves so much. I've never understood why no one from that doctor's office let us know that something was so obviously wrong. Just thinking that that was part of the medical community, really not understanding at the time maybe what Alzheimer's was about, but there's just so much education that's needed for that. That was the beginning of 8.5 years with this incredibly cruel disease. The kindest thing for my mother was when she no longer knew what was wrong. I feel that unless you've been through this with someone you love, you cannot imagine what Alzheimer's does to the person with the disease and how it affects your whole family. This isn't just simply memory loss. After my mother passed away, I knew I wanted to do something about Alzheimer's. For me, that meant becoming an advocate and meeting with elected officials, something I had never done before. And to be quite honest, I was a little bit intimidated by it. But I've been an advocate for just over 3 years now. And I thought I would go on and talk a little bit about these tips and tricks, meeting with elected officials. So I think you may have a handout that kind of corresponds with this, but we'll just roll along here with these effective meeting strategies. The first one is coordinate, coordinate, coordinate. You're part of a team. There'll be a team lead and everyone will have assigned roles. So it's something that you'll talk about before you go into the meeting, so you'll know. The team lead will probably start the meeting and kind of lead along, but someone will be sharing their story. Someone will be making an ask. In this case, we have 2 asks for state day, so someone else might be making the second ask. Someone will be asking if they can take a photo at the end of the meeting. So you'll know beforehand what you'll be doing. The second one is to be prepared. Think about this when you're having the meeting, that you're having a conversation. Basically, you want to share what you know about Alzheimer's and how it affected someone you loved or yourself or your family. You're educating the legislators that you're meeting with. Plan what you're going to say. Keep in mind that it's good to be brief and keep things simple. Just thinking about what is the main point you want to make. It's okay to have your notes with you or actually even to read from them. You're not expected to be an expert on the ask. So it's okay also if you don't know the answer to a question that you're asked during the meeting. We always just say something like, I'm not sure, or I don't have that information, I'm sorry, but I'll get back to you with that information. Or we'll say something like, I'll have someone from the Alzheimer's Association contact you directly with that information. Remember to take the leave behinds with you. So there'll be some documents. There are 1-sheets that explain the ask. Also has some information about statistics about Alzheimer's and dementia, and also some information about the Alzheimer's Association. I believe you'll also have paddles, and James can explain a little bit more about that later, that you'll be asking the legislators to maybe keep and hold up for the photo. 3, show up early. Plan on being about 10 minutes or so early. You might have to go through security to get to your meeting place. You might have a long walk to find the office where you are meeting. It's good to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. So be on time and end on time. Plan on just kind of going with the flow. Sometimes things change, so a meeting might be canceled at the last minute, or you might think that you have 15 minutes planned for the meeting, but suddenly when you get there to the office, they'll say, I'm sorry, I only have 5 minutes. And so you just kind of go with the flow and everything works out just fine. Limit distractions. And that one's kind of self-explanatory. Just please put your phone on silent. And if you have alarms set or anything, maybe just silent those too. The next thing is sharing your story. Actually, I think I skipped one. Actually, I think I have mine in a different order. The next one I have is sharing your story, which is the most important part. It's the most important part of the meeting. Not going to talk about it very much because right after this, Carol is going to do a wonderful job, just like she always does, with helping people understand how to tell their story. But I will say, know what you'd like to share beforehand, and if possible, tie your personal story with the ask. The next thing is to be passionate and to be kind. This is important to you. That's why you're an advocate and why you're attending State Day. It's okay to be passionate. It's okay to let that passion show through. We're asking for their help. Something you could say too during the course of your meeting with them is to ask someone if they've known someone with Alzheimer's, and then just listen. Hear what they have to say about it as well. They might have an even different perspective. It's good to say thank you throughout the meeting. Things like thank you for taking the meeting, or thank you for spending this time with us, or thank you for listening to my story. Show your smile. The Alzheimer's Association is always warmly welcomed. We have a reputation for being polite, respectful, and organized, and we're building relationships. During the meeting, it's okay to ask for support or their vote. You could say something like, is this something you can support? Do we have your vote? Always dress to impress, so business casual is good. Wear purple. It helps us stand out and it makes us memorable. Post and share. Ask permission first if it's okay to take a photo of the group, of everyone there, and post it on social media. And if it is okay, then share it with everyone who's there with you at the meeting, including the legislator, and ask them to post it. We use the hashtag #EndAlz and also hashtag #EndAlzAZ. And maybe someone can put that in the chat, or it might be on some paperwork for you when you do go to State Day on that day. And the last thing is to follow up. The team lead will probably say something along the lines of, who should I follow up with? Do you need any additional information or resources? Everyone says thank you at the end of the meeting. And a nice touch is if everyone would send a thank you card to the legislator that they met with. The team lead will email thank yous also when they follow up. And they'll also update James if he wasn't there at the meeting with him. One thing to remind you, you'll have an opportunity to practice legislative visits on Thursday during the Know Before You Go workshop. And that'll be a lot of fun. It's nice to practice beforehand, so you have a little bit more, know a little bit more about what to expect. Carol?
All right, so we are going to start talking about storytelling. Folks, you probably have noticed that during our event today, each one of us have had a theme as we've introduced ourselves by sharing our personal story before we went into the topic of discussion. And now I'm going to share how, as an advocate, you can prepare your own story. But first, we've got a video that we would like you to watch.
Okay, what am I saying again?
Just your name. My name is
Oh,
Jean.
my name is Jean Norris Wilhelm. Then
Diagnosed
I was diagnosed
with Alzheimer's.
with Alzheimer's.
At 55.
Yes, 55, almost 56. Here we go.
Warrior is what I would call Jean. Warrior, because it embodies so much about her strength and her courage, and she's so brave no matter what she does. She's always been a natural leader. And we used to joke because she's the warrior and I'm the worrier. We knew something was wrong. We just didn't know. And when we finally got that diagnosis, it was this aha moment.
The first day that I found out what happened, a tear came down and I said, this, I am not doing that. I just dried that off and I'm never gonna look at it that way. Wanted to be able to teach and help kids. We were getting medication during that time too, and I was still teaching. And then that's what was the big thing was like, I just can't do this. I can't do it.
This one, I really appreciate all the help and support you've given me over this past 9 weeks, but I couldn't have asked for a better mentor teacher. I also reached out to some of her former students and I said, if you could write a letter, share a favorite memory. I had fun. Not to look at the past, but to really recognize the legacy and the contributions and the impact that she continues to make, whether or not she's still in the classroom, she's still teaching. Yeah, very good. It's not your grandfather, it's not your grandmother, it's not this really old disease that is only affecting elderly. It's changing at an epidemic rate. And I think that is critical for us to say, you know, this is what's happening to us. And these are the signs that we recognized. And if us talking about it can help just one family or one person, I think it's critical. That is so critical because there is power in knowledge. The challenging part of seeing her struggle in different areas where she hadn't, and kind of then the balancing and kind of taking over some of those things like cooking. I mean, Jean is an amazing cook. And I think the emphasis on only memory, I think, is a huge misconception. There's so much more to what's happening. And for Jean, again, for her, it's language. It's language-based. I mean, it's memory too, of course, keys and, you know, retracing your steps and where did I put my shoe and, you know,
I know where my shoes are now.
I think single-handedly we've probably kept Post-it or 3M in business for a number of years because, you know, just like little things, like I used to fix her lunch when she was teaching, or like sneak in little notes here and there, or on the mirror, you know, good morning, beautiful, or just little things like that. And, you know, and they're not so little, all those things, and the power of words and what you express to each other. We've never shied away from that.
It's love. It's always been love.
It's not going to take our joy. That we every single day we find something to be happy about and focus on, and I love you.
I know.
And we do.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, we are so grateful for Jean and Kathy's story. Sadly, we did lose Jean in 2021. However, Kathy continues the fight throughout through her personal advocacy. She meets with state and federal legislators. She wants to ensure that no one loses a loved one to this horrible disease ever again. So let's start talking about this. What makes a good story? Well, it's all about you, your journey, your relationships, your memories. If you are new to advocacy, I want to encourage you to write your story for you. and make it authentic to you. When you are authentic, or perhaps another way to say that is when you are vulnerable, when you're transparent, then your story will be relatable to others. Remember, you are truly the only one who can share your story. So let's go ahead and talk about how to make our stories count. And we're going to use chat as our method. So this is a great connector to help us remember what we're going to do. I have a secret for you I want to share. Did you know that human beings, and yes, that includes state legislators, are hardwired to learn through stories? Reciting statistics won't be enough, and it's not going to challenge preconceptions or misconceptions of the disease. It takes authentic stories from the constituents, from you, the advocate. That is the whole reason you and I are here and why we are choosing to be Alzheimer's advocates. But how do you share your own Alzheimer's story in a way that's brief yet compelling enough to support our legislative asks? So let's break it down with let's chat. The first letter, C, is connect. So here are some suggestions for you to find common ground when you're trying to connect with that legislator. And some of these you've heard the thread as others have talked, especially Jackie, but asking the question during your conversation, have you known someone with Alzheimer's? And then give them a moment to tell you their story. And if they say they have not been personally affected by it, then let them know. I'm so happy for you, but I need to tell you the truth. In your lifetime, you will meet someone, you will know someone who's been affected by this disease. Find shared interests in history. It's okay to research how your story and the asks that we're going to be making might relate to their background and policy interests. This is digging in a little bit, but it's okay. We have the information readily available on each legislator. We can find out what committees they serve on. If they are the chair or the co-chair of something, we can find out what their interests might be. And they're your representative in your area. So you know your community, you know what's important. And so with just a little bit of digging and checking, you might be able to find out some areas of specific importance to that legislator that you're meeting with and tie that into what you're going to be talking about regarding Alzheimer's and the legislation that we are sharing with them and asking for their support of. All politics are local. Highlight statistics and events that illustrate the impact on your community. Again, this is your representative, ideally, that you're going to be talking to. Now, there's a good chance you're going to be meeting with other representatives as well. But when it's your representative for your community, feel free to remind them about information that affects them directly that they would consider with a lot more weight because they know it's their community that's being affected by it. Say thank you. We're going to tell you over and over and over again to say thank you. There's always a reason to thank a legislator. Let them know how much it means to you that they made time to meet with you. If you can imagine how many phone calls, emails, and requests they get on a daily basis, people asking them for something. And many times those people aren't thanking them, they're just demanding. So let's be the ones that stand out in the crowd and make sure that we show our appreciation and our gratitude as we meet with them and share our story and our ask. Okay, the next letter is H, and that stands for hook. You can grab their attention by putting the legislators in your shoes. So focus on a single story. You only have a minute or two typically, so share one moment, something having to do with the challenges you face, the struggles, the realization of what Alzheimer's has done in your life. As you heard our stories today, keep in mind that many of us have multiple stories and we have different lengths for them. So we've worked on them and tailored them to be Maybe it's a 10-second comment, maybe it's 30 seconds, maybe it's a minute, maybe it's 2 minutes. And maybe depending on who we're talking to, we're sharing one of our other stories that we feel would be more effective with that legislator. That's okay to do that. Paint the picture. Gosh, this is what you're taught. In all honesty, I'm going to tell a little bit my background. I've worked in sales, I've worked in marketing, I've worked in publicity, I've worked in media, and you're taught from the get-go that you need to paint the picture and tell the story. So paint a picture for them, use all 5 senses and present and do that in present tense to put them in the moment. As you were hearing the stories today, some of you may have been caught up in what was being said and you were right there with us as we talked about what we have experienced. That's what you want to do with your legislators. It's okay to get emotional. You are not a lobbyist. You are a constituent. You're an advocate. It's okay for you to be that real and that transparent. As advocates, we have sat in meetings many times where one of us cried or the legislator cried. In fact, I warned Jackie one time. I knew someone personally and I knew her story. And I warned her that when we met with her, be prepared, she was going to cry because she had lost her mother to the disease. And she was very emotional about it. And she did. And so we were prepared to be very compassionate for her and the hurt that she continues to feel with the loss of her mother. And you may be meeting with legislators that have gone through the exact same thing. So be prepared for that and have that compassion and empathy ready for their situation as well. Bridge, make sure that you can bridge to the legislative ask. Highlight one statistic illustrating the broader impact of your experience. So we're always, remember, we're going to paint that picture. We may start at point A, but we've got to get to B, C, D, E, until we get to the end of that story and it ties into what our ask is. So do your best to see how it will flow together from the beginning point to the end of the ask and asking for their commitment. And that leads us to the next letter A, which is ask. Show how they can help. Ask for that commitment. It's hard for people to ask for things. Our human nature is to say what we might not, what we need, but we may not actually ask for the help. So you're going to have to be prepared to go ahead and jump that hurdle and go ahead and ask them for the commitment for the legislation that we're presenting, the information that we're sharing. Bring them on board with us. If they need more information as you're talking, like we've said, you don't have to pretend like you have the answer. In fact, honestly, it's better if you need to follow up. I'll put it that way. You want the opportunity to speak to them again. So it's okay to say, you know, I don't have that answer for you right now, but either myself or I will have our policy staff get in contact with you and we will provide you that information. And we make sure then, of course, that we do that. Define next steps, which simply means ask what they need to reach a decision. If you've asked and they've not been clear with an answer, we've said an old-fashioned term in my family was if they're hemming and hawing, then it's okay to ask them what do they need to be able to reach that decision for themselves. And then make that plan to follow up. If they want the information that you're talking about sent to them electronically, great, that's the follow-up. We'll make sure we get that email to you. Do you want that email to you, or would you like that sent to your aide? And make sure we have the emails that they would like the information to go to. May I call you to follow up? What day next week would be good for you? Try to get as much commitment as you can to make sure that you follow through like you should, because they're going to remember that as well. If you're consistent and faithful, they're going to remember that, because again, lots of times people come through their doors and make promises that they do not keep. So we want to make sure that we are promise keepers. And if there's extra time in the meeting and additional stories can be shared, that is fine as well. Normally in the team, one of us shares our story, but sometimes a legislator decides they want to talk more. They want to hear more about how you've been affected by Alzheimer's. And so if they open that door, feel free to walk through it and share additional information with them and your story. And we're on to T, which is, guess what? Thank you. It's giving thanks. We want to make sure that they remember us for being the gracious individuals representing the Alzheimer's Association and the advocacy work that we do, because it matters to our families, it matters to our friends and neighbors, our community, and to our state. And so we want to stand out above everybody else when we go in for those meetings, and we want to thank them. And if they agreed and gave a commitment right there on the spot that they're going to support the legislation, definitely make sure you thank them for that. And then, of course, as Jackie mentioned, you're going to go into pictures and handshakes and end-alls, paddles, and all the things that are going to go into that meeting and bringing it to a really positive conclusion. So how about that? You now know how to chat.
This is the end of today's program. If anybody has any questions, you can unmute yourself or put it in the chat. I will say, like, a question that was posed to me earlier was, why are we doing this and why do we have the event on Thursday? It's because on Monday, the state day starts at 8:30 and our first legislative visit is at 8:30. We hit the ground running. Our state legislature has the ability, our state legislatures have the ability to meet with advocates and lobbyists and constituents only in the morning because they have session or committee in the afternoon. We are trying to set up tours. We are trying to set up a lot of activities, but please, the one thing that I can't stress enough is wear comfortable shoes. Love everybody to be as stylish as they possibly can, but you will be walking. Unlike past Alzheimer's advocacy state days, we have never been outside. This will be the first year where we will be outside. We will have a tent, we will have tables, we will have chairs, we will have heaters. The difference between this year and previous years is the state legislature is not necessarily allowing events on the lawn. So we will be across the street at Wesley Bolin Plaza. We will go into more detail on Thursday, and I will send out as much information as I possibly can. If you haven't seen in the chat, we did get our first bill number. It's an appropriations ask for the awareness campaign. We'll break it down for everybody on Thursday. But if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. And I can't see in the chat. Otherwise, we have the Know Before You Go seminar on Thursday from 3 to 4:30. I don't think it will be that long, but we will go in depth to what our legislative asks will be. We will also have opportunities to practice virtually. I will say legislative visits, even for me, and I've been doing this for a little over 8 years, I get nervous as well, but I will tell you, if you've never done this work before, you will be a complete expert after your very first meeting. Once you do it once, it's like, all right, I got this. We try to prepare you, but we don't want you to be experts on our legislation. We want you to be experts about you, hence why we focused on the story. I will be sending this video out along with the PowerPoint presentation probably tomorrow, but I look forward to seeing you all on Thursday, and then I look forward to seeing everybody on Monday. So if there are no questions or comments, thank you very much for attending today, and hopefully you learned something. Please practice your story. I know it seems kind of weird, but I will tell you, it's important. They will remember your story before they remember your legislation, hence why we give them a nice little packet. Something that Jackie said earlier is we will have paddles. We have these little tiny paddles that on one side say hashtag end alls, and the other side, I think it says hashtag alls impact, which is the sister organization of the Alzheimer's Association. They're our lobbying organization. We will have, in the past, we've worn these purple sashes. We decked the Capitol out in purple. If you don't have any purple, don't worry about it. We will make sure you are wearing some purple. And there are some. Perfect. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to stop recording. And we will see you all Thursday virtually, and we will see you Monday in person. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.